So let's return to Vladivostok, which is, of course, in far eastern Russia, where you can see Kim Jong-un there with President Putin, who are both talking for a little bit to the press before they go into their private discussions. The first time these two leaders have met, certainly for a one-on-one meeting, and it comes amid deadlocked global diplomacy with regards to the North Korean nuclear program. I'm sure you remember earlier this year, the second summit between Kim Jong-un and President Trump ended rather abruptly without any breakthrough whatsoever. That was in Vietnam. So this meeting, very important for both these leaders, and for President Putin, of course, it's a chance to raise Moscow's profile, as it were, in the region and gain more leverage with Washington, some might argue. Kim Jong-un actually arrived yesterday aboard an armoured train. He told Russia's state-owned media when he arrived he was hoping for a successful and useful visit and would like to use this visit with President Putin for a settlement of the situation in the Korean peninsula, as well as bilateral ties with Russia. That is what some are saying, the expectation on the part of Kim Jong-un. So it's quite interesting to see these two together and how they act together, their body language. I just want to introduce to you my guest today on the briefing, Cornelia Meyer. She's a familiar face from MRL Corporation. Good to see you, Cornelia.
Hi, good morning.
Give us your take on this meeting. What are your thoughts about these two leaders getting together?
Well, I think it makes absolute sense. And remember, in the noughties, we had the six-party talks. We had China, Russia, US, South and North Korea and Japan, all the sort of the vicinity around Korea and to the Koreans and the US. So I see this as sort of a getting a more multilateral framework again. So it does make it, to me, it makes sense coming from the, having followed the six-party, it shows how old I am, having followed the six-party talks. So I think in that sense, the first thing I thought when I saw this was six-party talks. That obviously Putin is trying to get himself his position on the international stage, as is Kim Jong-un. But when you look at it, it does make sense to have China, and they were on the margins always there, to have Russia there, to have Japan there because they're involved, and to have the two Koreas there. So in that sense, it's probably a good development.
I mean, for Kim Jong-un, of course, he wants to see alleviation of the international sanctions. The talks between him and President Trump didn't lead to the breakthrough that many hoped for. And there was quite a lot of concern, actually, about the fact that those talks didn't end well earlier this year.
Yeah, but when you saw how these talks were prepared, when you look at generally how these talks like that are prepared, the both Korean summits were, had very scanty preparation, and the first summit, actually nothing was really decided, and they both claimed victory. So at some stage something had to give, and something had to fall down there.
I mean, we didn't know much about this summit at all, and you just heard about it a couple of days ago, and he's arrived, and there he is now sitting.
Yeah, and I'm sure it was
Putin.
in the works a lot longer, because Putin is somebody who does prepare things, and who acribiously prepares, as does his foreign minister Lavrov, who is an old wise man. So I am sure that was well prepared, and it does make sense. I mean, they have sanctions. Obviously, if you're Kim, you want to do something against the sanctions. They're really crippling. So we'll see where it goes. Let's not forget, Russia has actually voted for the sanctions in the Security Council.
Absolutely. But of course, North Korea looks at Russia and China as probably its not closest allies, but most amicable allies on the international stage.
You remember, again, that shows us even before then, before the Soviet Union collapsed.
Like a history lesson with Cornelia Meyer.
Before the history collapse, it was Kim Il-sung. He was the master at playing China against Russia and just optimizing his position in the world. I mean, if you talk about somebody having having gotten the concept of arbitrage, it was Kim Il-sung.
Just tell us about China then and their thoughts about this summit. They'll be watching this extremely closely, as will, of course, the Trump administration in Washington. But from China's perspective?
From China's perspective, this is nothing actually to be feared. You might have seen that Russia
Well,
and China have been gotten a lot closer over the last few years.
I wasn't assuming they'd be fearful about this, actually, but they'd be watching with great interest
they will
to see,
watch with
what inroads can Russia make here?
What inroads can Russia make here? And I think at this point, the current leader won't be able to play Russia against China. I think Russia and China will, at some stage, sort of give him a bear hug.
And in terms of, bilateral ties, what does North Korea need in terms of what Russia can offer?
Russia can offer oil.
I was just going to say, I presume energy.
Russia can offer oil. Russia can also offer grain. Russia can offer, Russia has agriculture. Russia has oil. Russia has, other natural resources. So Russia has quite a bit to offer.
Because what's difficult to understand about North Korea, or get any sort of comprehensive information, that's the word I'm trying to look for, because we get piecemeal bits of information about what's going on in North Korea, what life is like there, the difficulty within the economy. The understanding we have is it's extremely tough, but of course tightly controlled.
Tightly controlled, and I think there's a two-tier system. There is the circle around the leadership who pretty much have everything. They pretty much live like we live here in London. And then there's the masses of people for whom food is scarce. I mean, energy is scarce. The winters in North Korea are extremely harsh.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for now.
Cornelia
will be back for our news briefing. Of course, we will return to that story as well as it develops today.